Good afternoon, good morning. Just to the co-hosts, are we ready to start?
Yes, welcome to the virtual senior official meeting on how to respond to humanitarian challenges in a long-term perspective in the Central Sahel. I am Sune Edmund Petersen, and I will be your moderator for this session. First, let me start out with a few pieces of practical information. Throughout the meeting, you have the possibility to have it translated using the Interpretify platform. The information should be on the screen in front of you or in the logistics note sent to you earlier. We will start in plenary, and I would kindly ask the people that are going to speak in the plenary session to be ready to unmute their microphone and turn the video on when they are given the floor. After that, we will split up in 3 tracks. In the tracks, the panelists will be able to control their own video and their own audio. Everybody else will be muted. However, you have the possibility to ask questions using the Q&A function in the tracks. The questions will be moderated, and if your question is selected, you will be informed and you'll be given the floor, and we will unmute your microphone for you. After we have been through the tracks, we'll meet here again for closing remarks. For now, I would like to hand over to Mr. Ramesh Rayasingham. Mr. Rayasingham, the floor is yours.
Thanks. Thank you very much indeed, Sune. And good afternoon and good morning to all our colleagues who have joined us, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, and all those involved with the Sahel. On behalf of the afternoon and good morning to all our colleagues. John, can you hear me now? Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, can you hear me now? Colleagues and all those involved with on behalf of Okay, can you hear me now?
So, Mr. Rayasingham, it seems like the audio from your side is very unstable. We're going to try to stabilize it, and we're going to try again in a few seconds. Just hang on. Or should I just hand over? I'll just hand over. Good. It seems like we have a problem with the connection to Mr. Raya Singham. So I would like to hand over to the first plenary speaker, Her Excellency Trine Rask Thyssen. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Dear participants, friends, and colleagues, it's an honor for me to welcome you to this senior official meeting. The meeting will help us prepare for the ministerial roundtable on the Central Sahel taking place on October the 20th. Let me be honest, this conference is more necessary than ever. An estimated 7.5 million people across Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger are in need of urgent humanitarian assistance this year alone. There continue to be rapid and alarming increase in the number of internally displaced people. 250,000 in Mali, 500,000 in Niger, and 1 million in Burkina Faso. Not to mention the thousands of people in Niger who are affected by floods. And in Mali, adding to numerous existing challenges, a coup has occurred with political uncertainty to follow. We all know that the situation is serious. The reason behind the severe situation are complex and multidimensional. The solutions need to be the same. More than 500 people are participating in this meeting today, and this might perhaps be part of the problems we have with the IT solutions. We hope it will work out through the conference. This is confirming a great willingness in the international community to act together to support solutions in the Sahel region, and solutions are desperately needed. One part of the solution is more funding. I hope that we jointly can put forward a compelling case for increased funding, so we'll be substantially pledging at the ministerial roundtable that will follow in October. This is of critical importance. However, it's not only about money. It's also about the way we work. We need to identify and promote solutions that prepare the response to immediate humanitarian needs, but in ways that promote lasting impact and solutions. For me, that means we have to be able to concurrently handle humanitarian emergencies and long-term solutions. These issues are particularly important in uniting the short and long term. These three issues that we'll be discussing today. One is ensuring basic services, 2 is protection of civilians, and 3, not the least, civil-military coordination in support of humanitarian access, ensuring ability to deliver assistance based on humanitarian principles. That is why we have chosen these themes for today's meeting. We must strive to reduce humanitarian needs by strengthening resilience and access to services. In doing so, we must continue to promote protection and respect for the international humanitarian principles. Easier said than done, not least in the current situation, but there is no other way. That is why we talk about humanitarian plus. Finally, we must ensure civil-military coordination in support of humanitarian access. I had the opportunity to visit the Sahel region before the corona pandemic. Amidst all the difficulties, I was also encouraged and impressed by the work carried out on the ground to improve the situation. For example, I visited Kaya in Burkina Faso. It made a huge impression on me to see solidarity of the local population, opening their homes to internally displaced people. However, hospitality can turn into friction when resources are scarce. It's vital to find and implement sustainable long-term solutions. It was therefore encouraging to see efforts made to secure improved water and sanitation services implemented in close cooperation with the local authorities. We would have preferred to have you all gather in the same room here in Copenhagen today. Nevertheless, we are happy that we are able to convene in this manner, allowing us to explore how to reach our common goal of promoting sustainable solutions to the growing humanitarian crisis in the Central Sahel region. Today, we have people from the region, people that work in the region. We are here to learn from them, so I'll not take more of your time. Before I finish, I want to thank our co-host, EU ECHO, UN OCHA, and Germany for excellent cooperation in the preparation of this meeting. And a special thanks also to the UNDP Nordic office here in the UN city in Copenhagen for the logistical support. I hope this process will lead to first, increased funding for humanitarian plus undertakings, second, strengthened resilience and improved access to basic services for the affected people, and finally, a strengthening of coordination for more coherent holistic approaches. By doing so, can we contribute to creating better lives with more opportunities for the people in the Central Sahel. I wish you all a very fruitful conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll try again with Mr. Ramasingham. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, State Secretary, for your comments, and apologies for the interruption on the technical side of my. If I may just then go to the next part of the program, I would now like to give the floor to the Secretary General of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Mali, His Excellency Ambassador. Thank you. Thank you.
Merci. Merci bien. Merci bien. Délégation du Mali heureuse de participer à cette séance.
It seems like there's 2 microphones turned on in your room. Please turn off one of them and then continue.
Okay.
Many thanks. Many thanks. Do we have some technical problems? Okay, if you can hear me, that's a good thing. Okay. Many thanks for your patience. Madam Secretary of State for the Development Policy in Denmark, Mr. Under Secretary General and co-host of Humanitarian Relief by Interim, ladies and gentlemen, representatives of Burkina Faso and Niger, and dear participants, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to address you in the name of the Republic of Mali and on behalf of the Malian people to convey our sincere thanks to the Danish and German governments, as well as to the European Union and to the United Nations for taking the initiative to organize this virtual meeting before the ministerial roundtable, which is planned for the 20th of October. I also want to salute our partners and multilateral partners for their efforts towards peace, security, and harmonious development in Mali and Sahel. Ladies and gentlemen, as you know, the Sahel region in general, and Mali in particular, has been going through a multidimensional crisis for the last few years, and the humanitarian consequences are felt. This leads to the degradation of the health situation in the country, making the population even more vulnerable when they're already facing other difficulties and challenges, and security challenges, socio-political challenges, economic challenges, climatic challenges, environmental challenges, to which we now have to add the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. This is the reason why the Malian delegation appreciates fully the choice of the 3 priority tracks chosen within this particular meeting today, which is the basic services, protection and civilo-military coordination, and the humanitarian principles. Therefore, we'd like to consider the state of play as it was presented in the synthesis report, the consequences on the humanitarian state, as well as the solutions that are put forward, which would enable us to move forward regarding the growing humanitarian needs and the lack in terms of planification, funding, mobilization, accountability, and coordination of interventions. Dear ladies and gentlemen, the situation in Central Sahel is very serious. When there is a commitment, whether it's a state commitment or non-state commitment, as well as the support of the international community. This is the reason why the government of Mali, in its reply to the humanitarian challenges and in order to minimize the suffering of the populations, is applying some initiatives, especially in the most stricken areas, and especially in the north and central parts of the country. The creation of the development zone in the northern Mali, as well as the implementation of the Sustainable Development Fund, are part of this framework, and this shows the will from the government to lead towards peace and reconciliation in Mali. As part of this process, this fund, with an amount of $44 million by the government, will contribute to the improvement of the population's livelihoods and conditions living in the north of the country through the implementation of some relevant projects with rapid impact, but yet as for these projects, these could be delayed as far as their implementation is concerned because of the COVID-19 pandemic. In the same way, the Malian authorities have adopted a national program for reducing poverty in the 200 poorest areas, as well as the financial inclusion fund for the most vulnerable population with 465 billion. Ladies and gentlemen, regarding the situation and the sanitary conditions in Mali, the authorities in the country, wanting to particularly address this in this part of the country, have implemented the secularization integrated plan in the central region, which aims to strengthen the security through a massive deployment of the forces in order to eradicate the violence actions taking place in the region. This secularization plan, with the central parts secularization, which is the main tenet of this, as well as the need for dialogue, social dialogue, and a governance part of it for the presence of administration and local collectivities within a particular framework for the communities. The economic and social development part, which is aimed at developing the basic services, as well as relaunching the local economies and helping the most socioeconomic vulnerable for strengthening the communities, which can lead to a positive change. Ladies and gentlemen, nevertheless, despite what has been said earlier, it is possible to make sure that humanitarian interventions can be more efficient, and this is the reason why we feel that it is necessary to highlight the following aspects by planning conjointly with the inclusion of humanitarian plans with the stakeholders, states and humanitarian partners in order to favor the optimal implementation of the local knowledge and expertise will lead to greater sustainability of actions in reply according to the policies of national treaties under the government's leadership. Therefore, a strong advocacy for the mobilization of consequent resources will enable us to reduce suffering for the most vulnerable by benefiting from the best practices and strengthening the basic social services, education and health and nutrition, water, hygiene and social protection, whilst doting these services with infrastructure and equipment and human resources that are competent in this area. The development of a civil concerted framework with the relevant partners in crisis areas in order to strengthen the database of data regarding the actions and undertaken. The dynamization of the humanitarian intervention and development by technical and financial support that would be adequate in order to improve accountability. Ladies and gentlemen, I will finish my intervention by paying tribute to people working in the humanitarian sector, which in a worst and degrading sector puts them at risk, and yet they are still committed, brave to help the most vulnerable population and with the adequate response that also leads us to having some hope for a better future. I also want to thank all our friends and partners who keep on expressing their solidarity and support for the Sahel countries to strengthen resilience, food security and institutional security from the communities and local institutions in preventing conflicts, and to strengthen the stabilization and peace building in our states and in development. Hoping that the questions that we have mentioned for your attention will hold your attention. I would like to reassure you that my country, Mali, will carry on with the responsibilities according to the legal conventions and helping and providing assistance and protection to anybody in need. I would like to thank you and wish for our meeting to enable us to help us move forward towards the humanitarian questions that are becoming more and more worrisome in the Sahel space. And thank you very much for your attention. I would like to thank Mr. Ambassador Boubacar Diallo, and now give the floor to Mr. Ambassador Hassan Kambouré, General Director of the Multilateral Cooperation for Burkina Faso. Many thanks.
Hello, hello, hello. Hello. Thank you, Mrs. Secretary of State for Development Policy of Denmark. Dear distinguished guests, we are very grateful to be participating to this meeting in preparation to the ministerial roundtable on October 20th. The interpreter cannot hear properly. The interpreter is sorry, he cannot hear the feed properly. The interpreter is very sorry, but the sound is very poor. And it is now, there is no sound coming for the interpreter. Oh.
Allô? Allô? Allô?
Hello. Can you hear me? It seems to be okay now. Hello. Can you hear me? Hello. Can you hear me? Yes, we can hear you. You hear me? Can you hear me? Perfectly. Hello. Thank you very much. Burkina Faso is delighted to participate to this meeting in preparation to the ministerial roundtable next October. The humanitarian situation in Sahel region is getting worse. In Burkina Faso in August, we had 2.2 million, almost 2.2 million people displaced. Up to 2 million people needing some help, assistance. On top of that, in the views to face that, we have adopted a plan of humanitarian response, which was launched on August 19th. We are looking to have a rapid response to this humanitarian crisis. Burkina Faso is conscious, is aware that this cannot be tackled by ourselves, and it has to be associated to other actions and other initiatives, development initiatives, clusters. And in that way, we adopted an emergency program for Sahel, with the intention to strengthen the resilience and strengthen the social cohesion, and to strengthen the access to basic service to the population. All of those measures, as well the humanitarian response plan and the emergency plan for Sahel, both require financial contribution from the international community. This is why this meeting scheduled in October is welcome. We are hoping to renew the commitment to the countries, towards the countries of Sahel region. And now with COVID-19, we are needing even more interest from the international community from the start of the crisis, and we are hoping this will help improve the situation. So we are very happy and looking forward to that meeting, and we're hoping to have the commitment renewed towards the countries of Sahel. We reaffirm our commitment to cooperate with all of the partners and stakeholders in order to comply with the commitments which have been taken at international level. We are indeed looking forward to the meeting on October 20th, and I thank you very much for your attention. Thank you. I would like to thank you also for your remarks. And I will now give the floor to the Director of Emergency Humanitarian Aid for Niger, Mrs. Mariama Umaru. The Secretary of State in charge for development policy of Denmark, ladies and gentlemen, representatives, ladies and gentlemen, representatives of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, Madam Representative, ladies and gentlemen, representatives of the European Union, as ladies and gentlemen, representatives of civil society and non-governmental organizations, and their distinguished guests. It's a great honor to take the floor and address you in the context of that preparatory meeting in preparation to the ministerial roundtable on the situation of Sahel countries on October. As you know, Niger has been facing major humanitarian crises, and this one is exacerbated with the climate change and is extremely serious. So it's been decades that we've been working, and we try to face and address the situation in the whole world. The financial mechanism and the dialogue with the partners have been established and have developed and have had to adapt to the change of tools and instruments available. With all these efforts, the national policies is aiming at helping vulnerable population, and also the security policy and the social protection policies have to be addressed. But the humanitarian needs have known a huge increase in the last few months due to the degradation of the safety situation and numerous internal conflicts at the borders between Mali and Niger. And it has to be noted also the climate change has made the situation worse with a higher frequency and seriousness, with causing more population to be displaced, which required now an emergency measures, and has highlighted the need for new competencies the Minister of the Humanitarian Action and the Management of Natural Disasters have been set up in 2016, and we're also working on maintaining peace and developing a strategy to strengthen the resilience. But in spite of this political context, we want to ensure that we can assess all the needs in full and those humanitarian needs are highlighting more and more complex risks which have been exacerbated by the pandemic. The economic and social impact has been huge, with up to 7 million people who need humanitarian assistance, and millions of people are vulnerable as a result of this situation. And with our country has been hosting a huge number of refugees or people who have been displaced in the border areas where there is insecurity for the civilians, make it difficult for the civilians to have access to the basic social rights, social services. we've got tens of thousands of migrants going across the country that we need to look after every year. With the historical floods that we had due to and distinguished guest, to that context, we have to remember that we have a situation where the access is made more complicated due to the presence of armed groups and where incidents with humanitarian actors are recurrent. And this really shows the relevance of the meeting that we have today and how important it is to come up with some recommendations which would enable us to address all those issues. And the cyclical and structural gaps are imposing on us new ways to plan different initiatives and to respond to shock situations, as well as a humanitarian response. The local actors from the civil society who have a central role to play in trying to identify synergies and finding sustainable solutions which reflect the local realities. With sectorial strategies and funding mechanisms which have to be adopted, which have to be flexible and inclusive in order to get progress. The political stability is also very important and will bring a significant solution to address together those challenges which are ours. Thank you very much for your attention. I would like to thank you. And
Je voudrais remercier Monsieur Soulaïro. If I can perhaps just suggest to our kind host, we have had some difficulties hearing the remarks of the representatives, the very important remarks of the representatives from the region. If we could perhaps post them online on the platform so that participants in this conference could have access to them later on, refer to them. Thank you very much for that. I now have the pleasure to give the floor to our co-host, Deputy Director General of ECHO, Michael Toller, and the head of the EU External Action Service, Mr. Irshad Razali, to deliver remarks and explain the day's proceedings. Thanks very much, the two of you. Over.
Thank you very much, Ramesh. I hope that the audible quality is good enough and we don't have the same bandwidth problems as before. Thank you very much for leading us through this proceedings here, which are so important. And thank you also to Secretary of State Trine Raske-Tygesen for her remarks of welcome introduction. We're very happy on behalf of the European Union to welcome all the participants here to this senior officials meeting. So many, and this underlines the that there is a real need for this meeting today. We have a high level of participation, and this is commensurate with the high level of humanitarian needs and the interest in looking for solutions for the benefit of the suffering populations in the central Sahel. We're all very concerned, obviously, in front of the unprecedented humanitarian crisis affecting the population, in particular in Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, as presented already by my colleagues, Ambassadors Boubacar Bourou Diallo Ambassador Hassan Tamburo and the Director Souley Iro. I think we cannot start this meeting without expressing our condolences, and therefore allow me to do this in the French language to be a little bit more direct.
In the name, on behalf of the EU, I would like to present my condolences, also in the name of the co-host of this conference, to those who have suffered with their families, with their personal assets and relatives and friends and colleagues due to the huge and very serious crisis in the Central Sahel region. We are showing you solidarity with you and the populations who have been seriously affected with that crisis, which is unprecedented. And we will work with you in order to solve those issues and try to identify solutions for the most affected population.
We are at the same time very grateful to all those who extend help at headquarters, but even more in the field. NGOs, UN organizations, the Red Cross and the Red Crescent, all those who deserve praise because they are engaged, they're committed continuously, they help and they provide humanitarian aid even in the most difficult, insecure and dangerous conditions. We all recognize, and I speak here on behalf of a major international donor of humanitarian aid, we all recognize the need to increase external assistance in order to provide a response at scale in front of the very high magnitude of the humanitarian development and security needs of the region. And therefore, we are happy that we can meet today in preparation of the ministerial roundtable that is going to come in a couple of weeks. This is important, and we will provide here the framework and the content for the commitments expected at the ministerial roundtable. Now, dear participants, you have all received the agenda of our long meeting this afternoon, and you have studied it carefully. And I'm very happy that we have the occasion to go into depth, especially in the three thematic breakout sessions, one on basic services, one on protection, and one on access, civil-military coordination, and the humanitarian principles. The exchange on each track will take place in parallel sessions, each in the form of panel presentations divided into two sequences, followed each by a session of questions and answers. I would like to indicate that as a preparatory step, consultative workshops have been conducted with humanitarian organizations in Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, and in Dakar. They have led to identify key issues to be discussed on this occasion today. They have made valuable recommendations in preparation of the ministerial roundtable. I would like to commend and thank at the same time all of those who participated in this and who produced so high quality contributions from the humanitarian organizations in a very short period of time and providing very valuable inputs to the conference. The consultation process has indeed generated a very interesting debate and material that will be discussed, and we're going to see how we will best use this and best capitalize on this on the very dynamic ideas and reflections, including in the framework of the conference. We are going to have these three parallel panel sessions, and after the introductory session, all of you, dear participants, you will have to transfer from the plenary session to one of the other thematic tracks, the track of your choice. You need to use the links that were provided in the logistics note, and you can transfer during the break session that we just start after the interventions here. With this, Ramesh, let me just allow myself to pass the floor to my colleague Rashad Erzali of the External Action Service of the European Union, who will certainly provide us a little bit more of the foreign policy setting of this conference. Over to you, Irshad. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. I will carry on in French, if you may.
Hello, everybody, and thank you very much for associating us to this initiative. I would like to take take this opportunity to highlight the importance of Sahel to the EU due to its geography, due to its history, but also due to its cultural links that we have with this region. I'd like to remind you, we're talking about Tombouctou, it's Agadez, these are areas of where we're extremely brilliant in recent past, but unfortunately the repetition of food crises over the last few years since the year 2000, the food insecurity has led the region in a very serious structural crisis, which are compelling us today to meet us in order to try to bring a solution and an answer to the people in the area with huge humanitarian needs, but also who have been victim of large number of victims due to terrorist attacks. So this is the reason why we want to meet up today, and in the name of the EU, we would like to englobe our efforts within a context, a framework dealing with political choices and political aspects which have weakened some of the institutions, which led to public policies which were not necessarily the best chosen, especially when it comes to humanitarian crises. We have Mali also facing a coup at the minute, and there are a lot of issues to be dealt with in the area. That's one of the aspects which has to be included. I've mentioned the second one, which is the security, the safety. The EU has been involved in counter-terrorism efforts, in funding the joint forces, in strengthening the capacities of the local actors to defend themselves in the area with the EU member states, the strengthening of the internal security. So we're talking about police and police forces, and another aspect which is to have to maintain our efforts for the development, and those developments which represent 8 billion euros in the area. And of course, today it's even more crucial today than it has been. So I wanted to be quite brief, but to say that we wanted to address all those issues within the framework of the Sahel coalition, because all are interconnected to each other, because they relate both to the capacity of the stakeholders and the actors locally, but also it is about the empowerment and the commitment, as it was demonstrated in times in how we are involved in the area, and the capacity to answer and respond to the local population's needs and the immediate needs of the population as a result of those attacks and the consequences it has on the population. So we'd like to reiterate the full commitment of the EU, and for us, this event, this meeting has got several facets, but we want to be able to bring a global, coherent response to the humanitarian challenges that we face today in an integrated manner. I wish you good, thank you very much, and I wish you a fruitful event.
Thank you very much, Michael and Esha, for your words, and also for the support from ECHO and for the EU for the Sahel region. Without further delay, I wish you all a very successful panel discussions, and look forward to reconvening back here in the plenary to hear the reflections of the co-hosts and discuss the way forward. Mr. Suna Pedersen, one of our moderators for today, will explain the next steps.
Thank you, Mr. Reisinger. Yes, so the next steps would be that we're going to split out in the 3 tracks. As we could see from the session here, there are slight difficulties occurring from the fact that there might be 2 microphones or 2 connections in one room. So I'll just give a few good advice, especially to the panelists that are going to be part of the 3 tracks. So 1, try to have only 1 connection in the room. Second, use a headset if possible. And if you're planning to ask any questions during the 3 tracks, please use headsets as well. If you know you have a very low bandwidth, you could consider switching off the camera, even though you are panelists. The links will be active in a few minutes to join the 3 tracks. And because time is slightly over, we will have an extra 5 minutes, and we will start at 9:35 Eastern Standard Time in the 3 tracks. Thank you very much.